My name is Lene Rule, and I'm here today with Beth Jacobs, who is not only a survivor of human trafficking, but has made it her life's work to save traffic victims. Beth works as a field trainer for an organization called Truckers Against Trafficking, which trains drivers throughout the country on how to identify and report signs of trafficking. Beth was featured on an episode of Big Rig Banner a few months ago and shared part of her personal story with us. Today, she's going to finish telling that story and update us on current legislation. Beth, thanks for joining us again.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
For those who are tuning in for the first time, can you give a brief overview of what we're talking about when we use the word trafficking and why TAT's focus on educating truck drivers is so important?
Yes. You know, in our country, our federal definition of human trafficking is you're either under the age of 18 because you don't have consent, or you've been subjected to force, fraud, or coercion. And if you think about that, when you think about pimps and traffickers, do they ever tell the truth? Not really. So that's fraud. So, anyone that has someone coercing them into prostitution actually is being trafficked. I mean, I don't want people to think that I think all prostitution is trafficking, because I don't. But I do think it crosses over a lot. And it crossed over in my experience too. And so that's what we're talking about today, how easy it is for that to happen to somebody, and how I got sucked in, to let people know. I didn't raise my hand and say, pick me, please. I want to be a prostitute. What a great career choice. It didn't happen like that. This can happen to anybody. I was asking for a ride home with somebody that I already thought I knew. So, that kind of made it worse.
Yeah, definitely. And so why is it, why are truck drivers specifically so important in the education process on this?
Oh, man, I think truck drivers are the eyes and the ears of the road. I mean, they can help law enforcement so much. They're probably going to see that before law enforcement sees it. You know what I mean? And it's just part of that, because traffickers have tried to bring young girls, they tried to traffic them at truck stops and other places, and truck drivers can see that. They can see that, and they can make that call. When I was trafficked, people kind of saw what was happening to me, but I don't think they knew what to do. And so they didn't know who to call. And I truly believe that if they knew who to call, somebody would have helped me. I just know they would have. And so it wouldn't have happened to me. And I'm sure they could save a lot of other people from this happening too. So that's why it's so important to me, because it's like personal. And
Now, I know you shared bits and pieces of your personal story the last time you were on the show, and described those, I think you said it was 6 years that you were trafficked. But can you tell us again how you first got picked up and then how you finally escaped?
Okay, so I had moved with my dad. I lived in a small town in northern Minnesota. There was no work here. My dad had to go to the Iron Range to find work. Well, my parents' marriage didn't withstand that. So when he came back, they separated, and my father moved to the city. Well, they played favorites. My sister was the golden child, and she
Mine
still
too.
is. Okay, well, I was my dad's favorite, but he wasn't there. He wasn't there anymore. So I asked if I could live with him, and they talked about it and said I could, as long as I got my GED and got a job. And so I was trying really hard to do that. To get around, I had to take a bus from Brooklyn Center to downtown Minneapolis, and then it would take me wherever I wanted to go. I don't know why you had to do it that way, but you did. You always had to go downtown Minneapolis. Well, right by the bus stop I had to wait at, there was like this pool hall type bar place. One day there's a guy standing out there holding a pool stick. Come on, baby. Come on in and shoot a game of pool. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, they're not going to let me in. I'm only 16. Oh, they'll let you in. Come on. He's like, I got the table now. And so I went in with them, and they even served me a beer. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, I thought I was so cool. Here's grown-ups treating me like I'm a grown-up. And I wasn't. But at 16, you think you're invincible,
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I would start going in there faithfully. Every time I went downtown, I would stop in there because they let me in. Anyway, I went on a weekend once and I missed the bus, right? And so I called my dad. He came and got me, but he scolded me all the way home. I work all week. I don't want to, drive you around all weekend. You're not being responsible. He was right. And I said, I'm so sorry, Dad. I'll never do it again. I swear. I'll be responsible. I'll call. I'll find out the bus schedule. Please don't send me back, because I didn't want to go back to the little town. And so he said, okay. So the very next day, of course, I went downtown again, and I just had to go in that pool hall. And I was checking my watch, though, because I didn't want to miss the bus. I went outside, and I missed the bus. The bus changed again. The schedule changed again on Sunday, and I didn't know that. It changed Saturday and Sunday, and I wasn't responsible, and I didn't call the bus company and find that out before that day. And I thought, I can't call my dad. I just swore to God I'd never do it again yesterday. It was yesterday. I can't do that to him. I love my dad. He's the only one in the universe that cares about me. And so one of the guys that I shot pool with before was in the bar. And him and his friend actually invited me to a barbecue at their house. I went to a barbecue at this guy named Miko's house, right? They talked to me, asked me a bunch of questions. It was Miko and his friend Mo. And they brought me home. I asked them if they'd drive me home from the barbecue, and they did. Okay, well, so I saw Mo in there. I wasn't as friendly with Mo as I was with Miko. But I asked him, hey, could you give me a ride home? And he was like, well, I don't know. I have Miko's car. Let me give him a call. So he comes back, and he's like, yep, Miko said you could, but he wants to see you. So what is going to happen is, I'm going to take his car. He's at a party. I'm going to drive to the party. I'll stay there, and then he'll take you home. And I thought, that's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
But I liked Miko. And so I wanted to see him too, and I was like, well, how far away is it? And he said, it's in Chicago. I said, well, where is that? He said, 2 hours. And I didn't know. I had never been out of Minnesota. I was like, okay. I didn't know Chicago was 6 to 8 hours away.
Yeah.
So I'm in the car. He has a couple of McDonald's cups, and he's like, you want a drink? We're going to a party. And so I took a drink. And the next thing I remember is he's waking me up, right? And it's dark out. Now, there's no way it should have been dark. I missed that bus at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it didn't get dark in Minnesota at that time till 9 or 10. And so I got scared right away, and I said, where are we? And he said, baby, do you know what I am? And I said, no. And he said, I'm a pimp. And I just kind of laughed nervously, because that's what I do when I'm nervous. I said, oh, that's great, but I'm not that kind of girl. And I tried to open the door and get out, and he grabbed me by the hair, pulled me back, and hit me a couple times. He said, no, bitch, I didn't ask you. This is what it is. You're going to get in this truck and sleep with this man, and he's going to give me the money, and we're going to go to Chicago. And I was terrified. He gives me to the truck driver. I cried, asked him to help me, which was very stupid, because he wasn't going to help me. He wanted what he wanted. But anyway, when he was done, he gives me back to the trafficker, and he told him he wanted some of that money back because I cried too much. And so he beat me outside. I mean, it was dark out, but there were other people there, and I know people saw, but I think they didn't know what to do. That's why I do what I do, because I want to tell them what to do. It's better to make that call and be wrong than not make that call at all. And I just believe if people had that number and were equipped, somebody would have helped me. Maybe all of them would have, you never know. But at that time, nobody helped me. And so I ended up, when he was done beating me, he told me that if I ever lost any more money for him, he was going to kill me and my daddy. And I got really scared, because he knew where my dad lived,
Yeah.
And like I said before, my dad was the only person in the universe I felt like loved me. I didn't think anyone else loved me. And so I didn't want him to get hurt over something I did. And so he puts me in the car and drives me to Chicago and brings me to this hotel, puts me in this room, takes all my clothes, my purse, everything. That's why I say my situation was like trafficking, because I think about girls who are trafficked in Burma, for example. And what's the difference between my case and their case? Make them, I had to have a new name. I didn't know anybody. They took everything that was familiar away from me. The only difference is I was in America.
Right.
That's the only difference. And so my case of human trafficking definitely crossed over with this prostitution thing. But my society at that time told me it was my fault that I picked that. And really all I picked was a ride home. I wanted to get home so I wouldn't get in trouble. And here I was in Chicago. So it was a horrible experience. I was kept in a room for quite some time. He would use drugs as punishment to try to get me to comply. There was a girl who would come in and put makeup on my face, to make me look better. And she's the one that told me what to do. She's like, no, act like you like it. If you act like you like it, you can leave. They'll let you go outside. And then she said, you can choose someone else. And she taught me what that meant, that I had to get my choosing fee and give it to a different pimp to see if he would accept me. And if he would accept me, I would get away from my vicious pimp,
Right.
And so, yeah, because we don't have much time, I was in that life for 6 years. I had no self-esteem. I felt like nobody wanted me. I had nowhere to go. There were no choices. I had no choices. And it seemed like everybody was out to exploit me, even the police. The police wanted me to do their police party. It was very humiliating. Because here's these people who are supposed to be my friends, and look what they're doing to me. And so the police didn't help me. There was a lady that would come down on the track and pray for us. She said if we didn't change our ways, we'd go to hell. And then one day I asked her to take me with her. I said, okay, I'm ready. I'll go. And she was like, what? I said, I'll go with you. And she said, I can't take you with me. And I said, well, what do you mean? You come down here, pray for us. Like, you can't help me? And she said, no. That made me feel like the churches didn't care. I just felt like I had nobody and I had no options. And so I just existed, I didn't think about tomorrow. I just lived through the day, over and over. And I did that for 6 years. I did small things to try to make my life better. I found what I call a popcorn pimp or a tennis shoe pimp. I found a pimp that wasn't such a pimp because I would have been killed. That first pimp would have killed me. He still beat me, don't get me wrong, but not as much as the first one. So I was able to choose that pimp, and I think that's how I survived the rest of those years. And it's hard to get out because you have no options. It was scary to get out. Where was I going to go? What was I going to do? Who would help me? I looked around. Police won't help me. The churches won't help me. Who's going to help me? So anyway, all of a sudden there's this serial killer that's going around killing prostituted women in Chicago. And so the police told me, watch out for this white van. Don't get in because the police are supposed to be my friends, right?
Right.
And so I went home, and told the pimp that. And he already knew because the pimp that I had was from a family. The mother was a reverend and all 3 boys were pimps. And I'm not sure what her daughter did. But, yeah. His brother, the middle child, was a very successful pimp. And then there was one that was in the penitentiary. I never actually met him. The whole 6 years he was in there. But anyway, he had a woman that was still out there working. And this serial killer guy got her. He didn't kill her. She lived barely. And so she was never the same, And the other 2 pimps talked about it, and they were like, no, we got to get our women out of here. And so they sent me and the other bottom to Minnesota. Well, the other pimp was all set up. He was very successful. So when we get there, I'm supposed to drop her off right away at a massage parlor. And then I was supposed to pick her up 4 hours later. So I dropped her off and went back to get her, and she wasn't out there waiting. So I'm just a nosy person in general. I had never seen a massage parlor in a strip mall before, and this one was in a strip mall. And so I wanted to see what kind of store was next to a massage parlor. So I flip on the lights, and I couldn't quite see in the window, so I got out of the car like an idiot, looked in the window, and who pulls up? The police. I'm like, oh, man. So they pull up, asked me what I'm doing there, ran my name, and then they told me I had a warrant for $50. I mean, I didn't even remember what it was for. The only thing I did when I was young was drinking in the park. So that's probably what it was for. And so they take me to jail. I took the car keys. The girl came down to the jail to get the car keys, and I said, well, did she pay my bond? And they were like, no. And I said, well, I'm not giving her the keys then. I didn't want to give up the keys. So I said, no. I just got mad because I knew he told her not to get me out. It was $50 lousy, as much money as I made for that man, and he wasn't going to get me out for $50. I hated jail. Jail was horrible, and he knew that. It was horrible for me. And $50, that wasn't nothing. So I was I was angry. And that's how I got out. I mean, it takes a lot of courage, and I don't know, I think I got that extra courage because I was angry about that. So when she left the jail, I called a regular I had in Chicago, and he wired the money, the $50, to a bondsman, and they walked over to the jail and got me out. And I went to where we were staying, her sister's house actually, and I told the girl I needed my stuff because I was going to go out and make my bond money back up. So she gave me some of my stuff, and as soon as she shut that door, I just started to cry because I knew I wasn't going back. And I felt like I made it. I didn't have any clue what I was going to do, but I made it. I was still alive. So anyway, I had decided that night, I remembered going to a hotel. I was trafficked to a dental convention in Minnesota. And I remember going to a hotel where they accepted my sister's paper. That's all I had. I didn't have any ID. And so I went there, and they let me stay. And so there I was in this hotel. And this is an important part, I think. For 4 months of my life, I would get up in the morning, go out to the track from 9 o'clock in the morning to 11. I would prostitute myself only long enough to get food for the day and to pay my hotel fare for the day. And then I would go sit in that room because I didn't know who would help me. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I felt like it was my fault. I ruined my life. And they told me, the trafficker told me I was ruined. Nobody would want me because, at that barbecue, they asked me questions. They asked me about religion and, all kinds of stuff. And in my family, the church that I went to, if you slept with someone out of marriage, you were ruined. Nobody would ever want you. You were done. And so that's how I felt. And so I sat there and just wasted my life. And finally, I got scared they were going to call the police on me, the hotel. I mean, I never had a pimp there. I didn't bring people there. I was the only one that was ever there. But one of the maids said she knew what I was doing. She got fired, and another maid told me she got fired because she wanted to call the police on me. And I thought, what? So I got scared, and I had to leave there because I didn't want to go to jail. So I finally, I ran into a trick who had property, which was the dumbest thing I've ever done, but I had to rent his property. So I ended up paying him rent and sleeping with him. But at least I was away from the hotel. And then when I went into that property, there was a woman who lived upstairs. And she kind of friended me a little bit. And she told me, what an unemployment office was. She told me where I could go get ID. She helped me.
Right.
Because and she was just a neighbor.
And how old were you at this point then?
Probably 21.
Okay.
It took me a year once I got to Minnesota to be able to, before I stopped altogether, because I didn't have any choice. I had no way to make money. That was the only way I knew to make money, and I had to survive. So And I know you wanted me to say that quickly.
No, no, that's good, because it really, I mean, just to picture you from 16 to age 21, and I'm sitting here thinking about what I was doing during that time in my life, and just the way you mature and change and the way you learn things. So to imagine going through all of that at that time period is just, it's amazing to see where you are now, because being told that you're worthless and trying to overcome that had to have been a really challenging thing for you to do.
Yes, and it's like I didn't think about next week ever, because I couldn't do that. It's like what was happening to me was terrible, and I would disassociate all the time. I didn't think about what was happening to me. When I was with a trick, I would think about something else. So for years I didn't grow, and I didn't, I wasn't nurtured. I just existed. It's people don't understand that. And, another part they don't understand is the prostitution part itself became irrelevant. It's like that's what I had to do to have somebody love me, and I just wanted someone to love me. And that,
right.
it was the only way somebody would love me. And I know it wasn't probably true, but it was better than not hearing it at all,
Yeah, absolutely. Did you ever contact your family at all during that time? Or, did they know what happened to you, or did you just disappear?
Well, I tried, their perspective, I'm sure, is I just disappeared. But, the trafficker always told me that my family didn't want me. And then there was a time I tried to get away and tried to go back home, and my mom was supposed to pick me up. Well, instead of my mom being there, the trafficker was there, and the trafficker then told me my mom sold me, and she didn't like me, so I believed him at that time.
Yeah.
And so we had this huge rift between us. I didn't want to deal with that. And then my dad, he was like divorcing my mother. I felt like I should have my mom's back. He was living with this woman that he cheated on my mom with. It was just messy. And I didn't want to be in that.
Right. Now, have you reconnected? I mean, I'm assuming you reconnected with your family at some point now?
Yes.
Yeah. That's good.
Yep. I have.
And
yep, both of them. My father died, and my mom, she's still here. And actually, I live in that little small town again because this is where she is, and I want to have a relationship with her before it's too late.
So after you got out and everything, how did you end up getting involved with TAT and getting a degree and ending up where you are now?
Okay, well, I found after I got out, I found a program. It was a few years later. I mean, I had no one to help me. That neighbor kind of helped me. So a few years later, she wasn't really my wife-in-law because we were with brothers. Anyway, so I had a relationship with her. Years later, she's the one that came to me and said, I found this group. It's kind of cool. You can go to this group, sit down, talk, other people just like us, and it's confidential. So anyway, she convinced me to go, and I went, and I liked it. And she was right. It was like all women who had been through what I've been through. And they called it educational /support, where we would talk about a topic, and then we would talk about how it applied to our lives. And I just thought that was great. And so, I stayed there. I went there for a year. And so I just got into it, and they helped me get into college. I decided to study social work because I wanted to give back to people like me. And I was able to graduate with honors. I did pretty good.
Awesome.
And yeah. And then I just worked. I mean, I got hired out of college with a supervisory position. So I got lucky. I worked at a place called Breaking Free in St. Paul, Minnesota. Okay. And I worked on and off at that place for over 10 years. I did groups for women, and I just loved it. I loved what I was doing. I would go around and tell my story, what happened to me, and let people know this can happen to anybody. I even was able to buy a house. I would have never had the tools to buy a house without them. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, I didn't know how to fix things. I didn't know about your finances, none of that. And they helped with that. So that was wonderful. It made me feel like a real life person, you know, instead of the person that I was out there.
Yeah.
I felt like I made it to the other side. I don't believe that I'm a prostitute. I'm not. This is not who I am. This is something that was done to me. It's a verb.
Yeah.
I was prostituted.
Yeah.
I'm not a prostitute. And so I try to be really careful and never call anybody that. So just thought I'd clarify that since I did it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to, put out there? Because we have a lot of truck drivers listening. So is there anything you'd like to say to them before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think you guys are awesome. I think you're amazing and you're the heroes. And I'm very grateful that you're listening, actually. I just want people to know this can happen to anyone. I didn't want this for myself. I wanted a ride home, I wanted a ride home to stay out of trouble. And then look what happened. And that's what it was from. It was from a ride. How many people have asked for a ride home and got it and was safe? A lot, but it does happen. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's how it happened to me. And it can happen to anyone. So please warn your loved ones, warn your family, tell them this is real. We need to stop people from buying people. We can't buy people.
Yes.
People should not be for sale.